theyeshiva.net.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome, my dearest friends. Welcome, welcome. I am here at my home in Muncie, and under the circumstances, we wanted to continue our daily classes, so we're going to be learning here Gemarah every morning, Be'ezer Hashem, on the web. You can tune in. It's live on theyeshiva.net. It's live on YouTube. It's live on Facebook. You can also ask questions. You can type in your questions on the YouTube channel, on the chat, or on Facebook. And God willing, I will stop a few times during the shir and take any questions. So feel free to ask any question you'd like. Okay, we took a little break because of Purim and then the action that's going on with the coronavirus. So let's get back into it. We're Masechta Megillah Daf Tesvav Amud Aleph. Masechta Megillah Daf Tesvav Amud Aleph. Where are we holding? Close to the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Megillah Tesvav Amud Aleph, 11 lines from the top. The line begins, Ben Elishama. You see Ben Elishama, Biyadua, Shehu Rasha, Ben Rasha. And the next piece, Amar Reb Nachman. Amar Reb Nachman. Says the Gemarah. Amar Reb Nachman said, Malachi ze Mordechai. The last prophet in the Tanakh is a man named Malachi. Right? We have the prophets. These are the prophets who lived in the beginning of the second Beis Hamikdash, at the end of the Babylonian exile, and the last prophet we have recorded is the prophet Malachi. So Reb Nachman tells us a chiddush. Malachi is synonymous with Mordechai. Malachi. So why is he called Malachi? Shahaya Mishnah LaMelech. Because he was second to the king. He was the prime minister of the Persian Empire. The Megillah ends, the whole end of the Megillah is Mordechai Yehudi Mishnah LaMelech HaChashverosh. He was a prime minister for the king. And because he was Mishnah LaMelech, he was like the Melech. So Melech is associated with Malachi. Malachi is like the Melech, the king. Because Mordechai virtually was the king. He was second in command. He was Mishnah LaMelech. The Marsha also says that Mordechai was like a Malach. Malach is an angel, like a Malach. Because he was Mishnah LaMelech HaChashverosh, the prime minister to the king, the prime minister of the king, he had this elevated status like an angel, like a Malach, in terms of his power, in terms of his status, and also in terms of how he saved the Jewish people during the terrible times of Haman. So that's what Reb Nachman says. Malachi is the same person like Mordechai. Meisve asks the Gemarah, Reb Nachman's statement seems to be contradicted by a Braisa. What does the Braisa tell us? The Braisa says, Baruch ben Neriah, Usroya ben Machseya. I know that you have Ma'asiya, right? But I changed it. I changed it based on the Hagoyas Hagra. Machasya, you see? Usroya ben Machseya. Not Ma'aseya, but Machseya. Baruch, the son of Neriah. Sroya, the son of Machseya. V'Daniel u'Mordechai. Daniel and Mordechai. Bilshon v'Chagai. Scharia Malachi. Kula nisnabu. Bishnas shtayim l'Daryavish. All these people, the Braisa tells us. Baruch, the son of Neriah. Sroya, the son of Machseya. Daniel, Mordechai Bilshon, Chagai, Scharia Malachi are all prophets. And they are all prophesying during the second year of the reign of the Persian king known as Daryavish. Who are these people? We have Baruch, we have Sroya, we have Daniel, we have Mordechai Bilshon will put together. We have Chagai, Scharia, Malachi. If Bilshon is a separate person, it's 8, or without that, it's 7. Baruch, Sroya, Daniel, Mordechai, Chagai, Scharia, Malachi. 7 prophets who are all prophesying in the second year of Daryavish. Who are these people and what are they prophesying about? Let's go back a little bit to the history which we discussed a few days ago in Masechta Megillah on Daf Yud Aleph. But now we come back to that. The first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. Please retain this information. The first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, according to our tradition, in the year 3338 since creation. It's easy to remember, 3338. In Hebrew, it's even easier. Gimel Shin Lamed Ches. Gimel is Gimel Alafim 3,338. Gimel Shin Lamed Ches. Why is it easy? Because Shin Lamed Ches is Shilach. It's the year that God sent away the Jewish people from Yerushalayim and from Eretz Yisrael. It was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar, the great emperor of Babylonia, Nebuchadnezzar Melech Bavel, who reigned for 45 years, as we learned in the past. Nebuchadnezzar exiled the Jewish people the first time 11 years before the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. That's when he exiled the king of Yehuda, Yechaniah, who was the son of Yehoiakim, who was the son of Yoshiyahu. And Yehoiakim was killed by Nebuchadnezzar, succeeded by his brother Yehoiachaz, who died after 3 months, succeeded by his son Yechaniah. And then Nebuchadnezzar came into Yerushalayim and he exiled Yechaniah together with Mordechai. They went to Babylonia. 11 years later, there was a new king that he appointed, a man named Tzidkiyahu, and when he rebelled against Nebuchadnezzar, contrary to the advice of the prophet Yirmiyahu, Nebuchadnezzar comes back, he destroys the first Beis HaMikdash, and he sends the rest of the Jews into exile. So this is in the year 3338 since creation. Nebuchadnezzar would die many years later, and he would be succeeded by his son, a man named Evil Meroidach. Evil Meroidach would die, and he would be succeeded by his son Belshazzar. Belshazzar is Vashti's father. Vashti is a daughter of Belshazzar. Belshazzar is assassinated. He's killed. And that's when the power goes over from Babylonia to Persia, from Bavel to Paras. Belshazzar the king was assassinated, according to our tradition, in the year 3389. Gimel Alafim Shin Peites. 3389. That's quite a few decades after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. The destruction of the Beis HaMikdash was 3338. So go to 3348, 58, 68, 78, 88, and 89. That's 51 years later, after the destruction of the first Beis HaMikdash. Belshazzar, the last monarch in the Babylonian dynasty, again, his father was Evil Meroidach, his father was Nebuchadnezzar, and now Belshazzar is gone, and he is succeeded by a man named Daryavish. Daryavish's reign continues for 1 year, and when he dies in the year 3390 since creation, this is a Jewish calendar, 3390, he is succeeded by his son-in-law, a man named Cyrus I. Cyrus I is now the Persian emperor, and he, a benevolent man, the first year of his reign, gives the Jewish people permission to rebuild the Beis HaMikdash. And that's when Zerubbabel, a man named Zerubbabel, who was a very significant person because he was a grandson of Yechaniah. Let's remember, Yechaniah was the king of Yehuda, who was exiled by Nebuchadnezzar 11 years before the Churban, together with prophets and sages, together with Mordechai. Zerubbabel came from that family of Yechaniah. So he leads the Jewish people with the permission of Cyrus to come back to Eretz Yisrael. He comes together with some of the Anshe Knesset Agdala, some of the great rabbis and sages of the time. And he comes back together with 40,000 Jews from Iran or Iraq. They come back and they start building the Beis HaMikdash. They build the Mizbeach, they start offering karbonos. When they lay the foundation for the Beis HaMikdash, the Samaritans, the Shemronim, whom Sancheriv brought into the Holy Land, they write a letter to Cyrus and they urge him to interrupt the construction of the Beis HaMikdash because the Jewish people are using this as a method to rebel against the king. If you're going to allow them to construct their epicenter, it's going to become a political and military threat to the Persian king. And as a result of that, Cyrus indeed instructs the Jewish people and forbids them from continuing the construction of the Beis HaMikdash. Cyrus, who took over Dariyavish, who took over Belshazzar, his reign continues for 3 years. Following his reign comes the very famous Achashverosh. Vayihi b'mei Achashverosh. Achashverosh would reign for 14 years. In the 3rd year of his reign, he makes his famous feast in Shushan, following which he gets rid of his queen Vashti. In the 12th year of his reign is when the miracle of Purim happens, the 12th year of Achashverosh's reign. Achashverosh dies after 14 years of being king, and he is succeeded, according to most accounts, by his son. His son, who is Daryavish, and according to many opinions, this is a Jewish boy born from Esther and Achashverosh. He is Daryavish. He's known as the last Daryavish Ha'acharon. He is the son of Esther, and in the 2nd year of his reign, 18 years after the first Cyrus allowed the Jews to build the Beis HaMikdash, but then stopped the construction, 18 years later, Daryavish, in the 2nd year of his reign after the death of his father Achashverosh, allows the Jews to start again, build the second Beis HaMikdash, and this is in the year 4008 since creation. And you guessed it, exactly 70 years after the Churban. The Churban was 3338 since creation, 48, 58, 68, 78, 88, 98, 08. 4008 since creation. Cyrus II, who is also known as Daryavish, who is Achashverosh's son, gives the Jews permission to go back and rebuild the Beis HaMikdash after the end of 70 years of the Churban. That's the prophecy the Gemarah is talking about. You see, in the 2nd year of Daryavish, all these prophets, Baruch, Sroya, Daniel, Mordechai, Bilshan, Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi, all give a prophecy from God to the Jews living in exile. It's time to go up to Yerushalayim and rebuild the Beis HaMikdash. This is when? The 2nd year of Daryavish's reign. They tell the Jews, and they're rushing them to go build the Beis HaMikdash, and at this time God will give them success, and they will not be stopped. The construction of the second Beis HaMikdash lasted for 4 years. It ended in the year 4012 since creation. This is what the Seder Olam Rabbah teaches us. One of the oldest chronicles of Jewish history, Seder Olam Rabbah, teaches us. Perek Chavtes, and Rashi tells this to us in Chagai. It took 4 years, and 4012, the second Beis HaMikdash was standing, and this begins the era of the second temple, the second Beis HaMikdash. What do we see from here? What do we see from this brisa? We see from this brisa that what? Malachi is not Mordechai. Because the brisa says, Baruch was a prophet, Sroya was a prophet, Daniel was a prophet, Mordechai, Bilshan, Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi. But according to Reb Nachman, Mordechai and Malachi are the same person, so why does the brisa mention them as two separate people? Says the Gemarah, Tiyufta. This brisa indeed constitutes a refutation of Reb Nachman's view that Mordechai and Malachi are the same person. They are not the same people. Mordechai lived at the same time like Malachi. These are all people who were in exile. Mordechai lived in Yerushalayim and came into exile. These are people who prophesied that the second Beis HaMikdash has to be rebuilt. These are people who lived through the story of Purim, which happened close to the end of the Babylonian exile. But they are not the same person. There's Mordechai and there's Malachi. So the idea that Malachi was just a malach and a melech is refuted from this brisa. Tanya, we learned another brisa, says the Gemarah. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha said, Malachi is Ezra. Malachi is not Mordechai, but Malachi is synonymous with a person called Ezra. And the Chachamim finally say, you know, Malachi is. So Reb Nachman says Malachi is Mordechai, Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha says Malachi is Ezra. Now that's very significant, because the reason he would be called Malachi is because Ezra, again, was like a malach. And in fact, the Pasuk describes Ezra as a malach. In Malachi, V'Torah yavakshu mipiyu ki malach Hashem tzva'osu. You learn, this is what the Marsha says, you learn Torah from somebody who's like a malach. And Ezra was considered one of the greatest Jews of the time, if not the greatest. And he also made Aliyah to help rebuild the second Beis HaMikdash at this era we're talking about. So Rabbi Shua ben Karcha says he is Malachi, but the Chachamim say no, Malachi is not a nickname for anybody. This is his real name. His name is Malachi. Amar Reb Nachman says, Mistabra Kamanda Amar. It's logical to say, like Rabbi Shua ben Karcha, Malachi ze Ezra. T'ksiv b'nevius Malachi. In the prophecy of Malachi, it says, Bogda Yehuda v'se'eva nesesa b'Yisrael b'Yerushalayim, kichilel Yehuda kodesh Hashem, asher ohev ubal bas keil necher. Malachi speaks about the era of the Jewish people living in Eretz Yisrael after the destruction of the first Beis HaMikdash. And he says, Judah betrayed its mission. An abomination was done among the Jewish people and in Jerusalem because Judah violated the holiness of God by loving and having relations and getting married to women who were not Jewish. This is a very known and tragic era in Jewish history discussed in the Sefer of Ezra and Malachi. When Ezra comes back, he finds that many Jews have intermarried during this period. And Ezra really creates a tshuva movement, a renewal movement. And he tells the Jews that they have to leave these marriages and come back to their faith, come back to their people. So Malachi is chastising the Jews who married out. Uman afrish nashim nachrius. And in history, who's the one who separated the Jews from these intermarriages? Ezra. The pasuk says in Ezra, Vayan Shchanya ben Yechiel b'bnei Elam vayomel Ezra. Shchanya, the son of Yechiel from Elam, tells Ezra, Anachnu ma'alnu be'eloi keinu v'noishev nashim nachrius. Shchanya of Yechiel tells Ezra, we have betrayed our God, and we have settled, we have married women who were not Jewish. And Ezra says, thank Hashem, do his will, and separate from these women who you shouldn't be married to. So we see that Malachi and Ezra both spoke to the Jews about the same theme. So Reb Nachman says that's why it's logical to assume, like Rabbi Shua ben Karcha, that perhaps Malachi is Ezra. Now you're asking a good question. Reb Nachman is the one who said before that Malachi is Mordechai. That's a very good question, which is why it's probably important to say that in Ein Yaakov, the first Reb Nachman is quoting Rav. So because he's quoting Rav, so this actually wasn't his own observation that Malachi is Mordechai, was the name of Rav, and now he's correcting, he's speaking about his own view that he, Reb Nachman himself, not in the name of Rav, holds like Rabbi Shua ben Karcha that Malachi is Ezra, because both of them we find chastising and encouraging the Jewish people to let go of intermarriages. So therefore, this is another source to assume that Malachi is Ezra, because Malachi and Ezra are both talking about the same thing. They're talking about the same thing. There is at least room logically to say it's the same person, and that's why they're talking about the same thing, because it's not two separate people, it's the same person. Says the Gemarah weiter. Tanu Rabbanon, the rabbis taught, Arba noshim yafyafiyos hayu ba'olam. There were 4 beautiful women in the world. And as the Marsha says, it could have said yafos, they were beautiful. It says yafyafiyos, which has like the word yafa twice. You see yafyafiyos is twice. Yafe, because their beauty was something astounding, extraordinary. Sarah, Avigayil, Rachav, ve'Esther. Sarah, Avigayil, Rachav, and Esther. I should just say that some say that the order has to be changed. Sarah, Rachav, Avigayil, and Esther, because in terms of historical chronology, Sarah is the first. She is the wife of Avram Avinu, the first Jewish woman. And then it's Rachav. Rachav, we learned, was lived in Jericho and Yericho when Yehoshua conquered the land of Israel. So that's, of course, a few hundred years after Sarah. Then you have Avigayil, who marries David HaMelech, who, of course, lives a few hundred years after Rachav. And then finally you have Esther HaMalka, who lives yet a few hundred years after Avigayil. So the chronological order is Sarah, Rachav, Avigayil, and Esther. These are 4 women in history who are extraordinary. And Tosfos, on the top, asks an interesting question. The first Tosfos, Tesvav Amar Aleph, Kasha, Amaylei Chashav Chava. Why doesn't he mention Chava? The Hamrinim bePerek Cheskes Habatim Babasur Dafnon Ches, Sarah lifnei Chava kekayf b'fnei Adam. The Gemarah tells us that Sarah, relative to Chava, is kekayf b'fnei Adam. It's like a chimpanzee or like a monkey in the presence of a person. In other words, even though Sarah her beauty was extraordinary, but compared to Chava, it paled in comparison to the dazzling radiance and beauty of Chava. So why doesn't he mention Chava? Tosfos says that apparently the Gemarah is referring to the natural beauty that comes to a woman who was born from a mother, from a woman. And of course, Chava does not go into that category, and therefore, Tosfos says Chava is not mentioned in the list of these four beautiful women. There's an expression in Tehillim, Yafyafisa mibnei Adam. So the Maharsha says, Yafyafis mibnei Adam, we're talking about Yofi that comes mibnei Adam. I think it's Kapitel Memtes. The beauty that comes mibnei Adam, from somebody who was born from bnei Adam. Yafyafis mibnei Adam. Where Chava, of course, was not born from a mother. She, together with Adam, were created by Hashem himself. And the Gemarah says, according to the opinion that we learned earlier, that Esther was actually greenish. She had a greenish or yellowish complexion. We learned earlier on Daf Yud Gimel. Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha said she had a special thread of grace that was over her face, but she herself did not have that level of beauty. Mapik Esther uma'ayel Vashti. He would remove Esther from the list and put in Vashti into the list, saying that Vashti's beauty was something special. And the Gemarah says, Tanu Rabbanon, the rabbis taught, Rachav b'shma zinsa. Rachav, who was Rachav? Rachav, let's remember, Yehoshua sent 2 spies to go to Eretz Yisrael before the Jews were ready to enter the land. And they came to Yericho, to Jericho, and they went to Rachav. Rachav is defined as a Zaina, which some commentators say means she was literally a promiscuous woman. The Gemarah tells us in Zvachim that Rachav was 10 years old when the Jews left Egypt. Zvachim Kufta Zayin. She was 10 years old when the Jews left Egypt, and for 40 years, she was one of the most promiscuous women in the land of Canaan. The Gemarah tells us there that there was no nobleman, no prominent person who didn't have relations with Rachav. And then she met the spies of Yehoshua. She helped them tremendously. They saved her life when they came into Eretz Yisrael. And we learned before, she converted and married Yehoshua ben Nun. Incredible. And as we learned before, 8 prophets came from her, including the great female prophet Huldah and the great prophet Yirmiyah Navi, all come from Rachav. I should just say there's another interpretation that Zaina doesn't mean a harlot. It means she had a motel. She used to feed people. She had like a bed and breakfast. That's why the 2 spies went to her, because she had a motel. And some commentators say it's the same idea. She had a motel for this purpose, or the idea she had a motel is just a euphemism for another agenda. This is Rachav. We're learning here that Rachav was from the 4 most beautiful women who lived. So the Gemarah says, Rachav b'shma zinsa. Somebody who mentions Rachav's name already can get drawn into promiscuous relationships. In other words, there is something so powerful about Rachav's beauty. Rashi puts it, Rachav b'shma zinsa hamaskir es shma nigr achatayvas nus. Mentioning her name can draw somebody in to the craving of immoral relationships, of znus, of promiscuous, intimate relations. Yael b'kaila. Yael has that power through her voice. Rachav is through her name. Just the name Rachav triggers a person. Yael, her voice. Somebody who would hear Yael's voice. Yael is the famous woman in Tanakh in the book of Shoftim, chapter 5. Sisera was an arch enemy of the Jewish people, and he fought the Jewish people. The famous story of Dvorah, who went to war against Sisera with Barak, and Sisera ran away. He was defeated, he ran away to the tent of Yael, and Yael killed Sisera. Yael's beauty was extraordinary. So the Gemarah says, Yael b'kaila. If somebody would hear her voice, he would be drawn into promiscuity. Avigayil b'schirasa. Avigayil, her beauty was so profound and intense, even remembering her would trigger one's intimate feelings and emotions. Michal bas Shaul b'riyasa. Michal, the daughter of Shaul, who married David HaMelech. Shaul married off his daughter Michal to David. She b'riyasa. Seeing her is enough to trigger one's profound, intimate feelings, experiences, and sensations. So we have 4 different women. Rachav, mentioning her name is enough. Rachav b'shma, just mentioning Rachav's name, triggered people. Powerful. It triggered them very powerfully in terms of intimate feelings. Yael, hearing her voice. Her voice had that sensual power. Avigayil, remembering her. Not even mentioning her name, just remembering her. And Michal, seeing her. Wow. That's what the Gemarah tells us. Rabbi Yitzchak says, Kol ha'omer Rachav Rachav miyad nikri. Somebody who just says Rachav Rachav immediately experiences a carry, an emission of procreative seed. That's how powerful Rachav was. Saying the name Rachav Rachav twice, Rachav Rachav miyad nikri, it immediately produces a very tangible result in the form of a carry. The person emits procreative substance. Amalei Reb Nachman, ano amine v'lo yichbas li. I said Rachav Rachav, and v'lo yichbas li, it doesn't bother me, meaning nothing happened to me, and nothing is happening to me, and therefore it doesn't bother me. I'm really not concerned about this. I really don't know where you're getting this from, Rabbi Yitzchak. Amalei, Rabbi Yitzchak said, Ki ka'amine b'yoida u'b'makira. I'm not talking about you, Reb Yitzchak. I'm not talking about you, Reb Nachman. I meant this about Yoido Makira, somebody who knows her, somebody who recognizes her, somebody who knew Rachav, not you. You could say Rachav, Rachav all day. It doesn't mean anything to you. It's just a name. I'm talking about Biyoido B'Makira, somebody who knows Rachav, somebody who recognizes Rachav. In other words, somebody who has an appreciation of Rachav's beauty. This person, when he says Rachav, Rachav twice, it's so powerful, it has an effect on the body immediately. That's what Reb Yitzchak meant. I don't mean any person who says the words Rachav, Rachav. I should just say there's an interesting argument here between Rashi and Tosfos. Because the same Gemarah is a Masechta Tainis Daf Hey Amud Beis. And Rashi says, B'yoido b'makira means he knows her and he recognizes her, which seems like a redundancy. There's somebody who knows her, somebody who recognizes her. In other words, somebody who knows, who has an acquaintance with Rachav. But Tosfos says it's 2 separate things. Yoida comes from the word Va'adam Yada Eschava. Somebody who had intimacy with Rachav. Yoida doesn't only mean knowledge, but Yada in Tanakh is Adam Yada is Chava, Adam knew Chava, which means he had relations with Chava. So B'yoda means somebody who had relations with Rachav, or Makira is somebody who saw her. Somebody who saw her. And that's how Tosfos explains it. So it's two separate things. Makira is somebody who saw her, and Yoida is somebody who actually had relations. And that's what he's saying. Somebody who was together with Rachav physically, or somebody who saw her, he will be affected by the words Rachav, Rachav. Okay, now I want to discuss this for a few moments before we move on. Why is the Gemarah saying all this? This is a very fascinating Gemarah. Why would the Gemarah feel the need to say all of these things? That is the fascinating question here. What is the Gemarah trying to say? I just want to add, I mentioned Rashi and Tosfos. The Maharsha says that Yoida means he had intimacy with her, like V'adam yada eschava or V'ish lo yida'a. We have by Rivka in Parshas Chayesara, and Makira is because of that he's Makir her. It's one thing. Yoida, and because of that he knows her, he recognizes her in a different way, and that's why when he says Rachav, Rachav, it's going to have tremendous impact on him. Now the question is, why is the Gemarah sharing all this? There were 4 most beautiful women in the world, and Sarah, Avigayil, Rachav, Esther, and how they impact men, and other women impact men, especially about Rachav and Rachav. I mean, you're telling me that if you don't know Rachav, you could say her name. So if you could say her name, so why do you have to tell this to me? We didn't see Rachav. We don't know Rachav. We have a name, Rachav. So why would Rabbi Yitzchak speak about this? And Rabbi Yitzchak is living a very long time after Rachav. He's living some 1,500 years after Rachav, because they go into Eretz Yisrael, there's Rachav, and there's more than 800 years since the Churban Bayeshenim. You're talking about more than a millennium, 1,000 years and change after Rachav. Why would Rabbi Yitzchak say all this? Kala Omer Rachav, Rachav, Miyad Nikri. It's hard to understand this. So let me just give you a few perspectives. The first perspective comes from the Iyun Yaakov. Iyun Yaakov is one of the commentators on Ein Yaakov. And he says something very powerful. And he says that the Gemarah speaks about these beautiful women because the beauty is one of the ways in which God manifests himself in creation. It's one of the ways in which Hashem manifests himself in our world, and it's a praise of God to be able to say there is such astounding beauty. In other words, beauty is a manifestation of godliness. It could be misconstrued, it could be misused, it could be used in a destructive way, in a promiscuous way, but it doesn't take away from the fact that beauty is divine. It's a certain way through which godliness manifests himself. And he brings a fascinating interpretation, which says also in other svarim. We say in Mishlei every Friday night, what do we say at the end by the letter Shin? Ve'at alis al kulana sheker achein ve'hevel hayofi isha yiras Hashem hitis halal. Sheker achein means chein, charm is false, and yoifi, beauty is vain. Isha yiras Hashem, a woman who fears God, he tishalal, she shall be praised. But what's the he? What's the he tishalal? Isha yiras Hashem tishalal, a woman who fears God shall be praised. You said charm is false, beauty is vain. Yiras Hashem tishalal. What's he tishalal? So there's a beautiful interpretation that he brings. Chein and yoifi are false and vain if they're disconnected from Yiras Hashem. But when Chein and Yoifi are part of Yiras Hashem, he tishalal. Isha Yiras Hashem, a woman who fears God, he tishalal, she's praised not only for the Yiras Hashem, also for the charm and also for the beauty. It's a beautiful interpretation. The first time I heard this interpretation it was pretty fascinating, I have to say. In Israel, they have what's called the beauty contest. And they have a woman who's nominated as Malkat HaYofi, the queen of beauty. And she was an Israeli girl. This is, I think, 1990 or 1991, an Israeli girl, obviously a Jewish girl, who had also a strong sense for tradition. obviously didn't grow up in a very religious community. Malkat HaYofi is not exactly the most modest display of the feminine power. But she came to America, and she was hailed as a celebrity here, and she came to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He would give Sunday morning, he would give dollars for anybody who wanted to have a blessing, and they should give for tzedakah. And she introduced herself, and she said she's the Malkat HaYofi. She was nominated as the beauty queen of Israel. I'll never forget, without skipping a heart's beat, the Rebbe tells her, it says, Sheker HaChein Vehevel HaYofi, which didn't seem like the Lubavitcher Rebbe, like, beauty is nothing and charm is false. But then he continued, Isha Yiras Hashem, he tishalo. A woman who has Yiras Hashem, he tishalo. She will be praised. That woman who had Chein and Yofi is praised because beauty essentially is a gift of God. It's a manifestation of God. The Moirei Nayim, Reb Nachum Chernobyl writes something he heard from the Maggid of Mezrich. It's connected to this, even though it's a little more abstract. Yosef HaTzadik sees the wife of Potiphar, and he is overtaken by her beauty. The pasuk says, "Vayavai habayis alasos malachtoi," and the Gemarah says in Maseches Sotah Lamed Vav, there's a machlokes Rav and Shmuel. One of the opinions is he surrendered to her, but the last moment, Vayonos vayetze hachutza, he fled outside. He fled, and he left the cloak in her hand. And Chazal tell us he saw the mus shel Yaakov aviv b'chaloin, the visage of Yaakov, his father, in the window. How did that stop him from engaging with Potiphar in an immodest and immoral way? So the Maggid of Mezrich says that Potiphar had a tremendous power of beauty, which is tiferes, splendor, harmony, beauty. Dmus Yaakov aviv ra b'chaloin. Yosef saw her beauty, but he saw in it the image of Yaakov, his father. Yaakov, the Zohar tells us, is midas hatiferes. He embodies the attribute of beauty, of splendor, of harmony. But Yaakov represents divine beauty in its source, divine beauty in its core. And Yosef realized that Potiphar is just the physical manifestation of that beauty in this world. So why will I surrender my opportunity to hold on to the source of all beauty and give it away for this trickle of beauty that will actually take me away from my own inner beauty, from Yaakov's beauty, from the ultimate divine beauty? Dmus Yaakov aviv ra b'chaloin. He saw in Potiphar's beauty only a manifestation of Yaakov's midas hatiferes, which is a reflection. Yaakov was a conduit for God's beauty, for God's tiferes. Let me go back to the source. Let me go back to the core. Let me not sell my soul for cheap. Vayonos vayetze hachutza. He went outward. He left the inhibitions of the home, the confinements of the home. He didn't want tiferes in a limited form. He wanted tiferes in its full, uninhibited, infinite expression. A marvelous interpretation. The Baal Shem Tov says, also quoted in Moirei Nayim by his student Reb Nachum of Chernobyl, fascinating. It says in Parshas Lech Lecha, Avram comes with Sarah to Egypt. Remember, Sarah is one of the foremost beautiful women in history. And when they come to Egypt, he tells Sarah, Hine noya dati ki ishi yefas mara'at. I have now discovered that you are beautiful. Now? Now you discovered I'm beautiful? That's what Rashi asks, right? And he gives different interpretations. One interpretation is, now it's time to think about it because the Egyptians may kidnap you. Another interpretation is because he was so modest. He never really gazed at her beauty. That's what another interpretation is. A third interpretation is even this long journey did not take away from your beauty. But the Baal Shem Tov says something very, very powerful. Avraham tells Sarah, till this point, I always saw your beauty as a conduit for God's beauty. But now suddenly, I'm seeing your beauty as self-contained. Which means Egypt got to me. It means that the immorality of Egypt has affected my thoughts. It pulled me down, and I don't see your beauty as a conduit for God's beauty anymore. That's what I have to worry about. Imri no achoisiyat, he says. Tell them you're my sister. Achoisi means connection. Ichui, Alexandria, the Alexandrian knot in Gemarah is called a knot. Achois means connection. The pasuk says, Emar lechachma achoisiyat, tell Chachma you are my sister. Avraham says, now we have to hold on very, very tight. Achoisiyat, and he has to connect the Chachma to Achoisi to be able not to fall down into the moral abyss of Egyptian promiscuity. So this is all an explanation why the Gemarah brings out this concept of beauty. That's one way of looking at it. That's the Iyun Yaakov's interpretation, even though I developed it and tried to explain it. Now I'm going to tell you the interpretation of the Noida B'Yehuda. The Noida B'Yehuda in Shal Setshuvas Noida B'Yehuda, Ma'adura Kama, Eira Chaim Simon Chav Dalad, he was the rabbi of Prague, Rabbi Cheskel Landau. And he starts off his commentary on this. And he says that why would the Chachamim speak about this beauty? And they would put it into the Gemarah, like we all have to know about it. Like, why is that so relevant to us? And the Noida B'Yehuda says, and I quote, Kol divreim yeshlam shayrish l'mayla. Whatever the Chachamim say has a root above, which means there's many. We learned, if you remember, in the Maimer of Purim in Torah, the Baal HaTanya teaches us that every concept in Torah is a mashal for a nimshal. Everything has a shayrish, meaning you could understand it on a literal level, and you could also see it as a remez, as a hint, or a reflection of a much deeper idea. But then the Noida B'Yehuda gives one perspective to explain it, and it's worth it to mention. The Noida B'Yehuda says there's a reason that the Gemarah tells us about these four women. It teaches us something very powerful. Sarah is so beautiful, and yet Avraham remains completely modest with her, respectful of her boundaries, respectful of his own boundaries. As I quoted before the Rashi, Hine no yadati ki ish yifas mara'at. He never gazed at her in an inappropriate way. That's Avram Avinu. Or the deeper level, the deeper explanation I said from the Baal Shem Tov, that he appreciated her beauty even more as a manifestation of divine beauty. What about Esther? Esther, the Noida B'Yehuda tells you about God's miracles for the Jewish people. He orchestrated that Esther should have this level of beauty, which was made her the agent of salvation. The Gemarah takes out Esther and puts in Vashti, according to one opinion. He says, too, this also represents God's miracles. That even though Vashti was so beautiful, and therefore Achashverosh should have not eliminated her, he eliminated her. And even though Esther, relative to Vashti, had olive skin, we say Yerakroikis. Yerakroikis, some people say greenish or yellowish, or somebody mentioned olive skin. Even though that happened, and you would think he would compare it to Vashti and say, nah, she's not beautiful. Nonetheless, despite Vashti's beauty, he eliminated Vashti, which was unnatural, and he chose Esther, which was unnatural, because this became the agent of Jewish salvation, and when God wants, it happens, and that's the Noida B'Yehuda's explanation. What about the middle two, Rachav and Avigayil? The Noida B'Yehuda says that the Chazal are trying to tell us. And here we come to the last point. This is based on the Noida B'Yehuda and other commentators. The Chazal are trying to teach us something very important about life. And I just want to say this appropriately, and we can appreciate this. The sages in the Talmud were extremely honest. One of the greatest problems in life, in Judaism, in religion, is when there's a dishonesty. What the Chazal are teaching you here is that there are women who are blessed with such a power of beauty that is dazzling and overwhelming, to the point that Rachav, if you mention her name, if you knew her, and you mention her name, it's enough to trigger you powerfully. Avigayil, you don't have to mention her name, you just have to remember her. That's enough. Michal, you had to see. Michal, you had to see. And finally, Yael, you had to hear. Why is this so important? It's so important to understand the realities of life. That if you don't have the proper boundaries, even the greatest of the great could be consumed and ultimately lose their morality and lose their marriage and lose their family. That's why the Gemarah is saying this. The Noda B'Yehuda tells us, Gemara is not trying just to say Rachav was beautiful, Avigayil was beautiful. Yes, there's other interpretations, but this interpretation is, and I want to tell you how beautiful they were. They were so beautiful that just mentioning a name can change the trajectory of your day and the trajectory of your life. And therefore you have to know this. Because when you don't know this and you make believe it's nothing, you belittle it, you become a victim of it. The problem is not that we get triggered very easily. The problem is not that temptation takes us over very fast. The problem is not that some people really get into our souls and can drive us mad in one way or another. That's not the problem. The problem is when you're unaware of it, when you become too idealistic and you think that you're an angel, you're a Malachi, you're oblivious. That's the problem. And then you don't watch yourself. You don't have the proper boundaries. So this is an incredible lesson why the Gemarah is saying all this about Rachav and about Avigayil and about Yael and about Michal. Why? Why is this relevant to me? If I say Rachav twice, I have a carry. Look, why? Even if it's not relevant today, I didn't know Rachav. And the answer is the Gemarah is trying to tell you what beauty can be like, what it can do to people, how powerful it is, and therefore how careful even the greatest of the greatest have to be in terms of boundaries. And when you feel yourself being triggered this way, you don't have to get upset at yourself. You're human. Welcome to the human race. This is part of the experience of life. The experience is not the problem. It's not the tragedy. The tragedy is when you're unaware of it and therefore you don't create protection against it. I told you once a story and I'll say it again. It's a great story and I think it captures this idea in the most powerful way. And the story is, I heard this from a big Rav in Yerushalayim. And he said that in Poland there was a tzaddik, a Jew who was known as a gute Yid, a good Jew, a holy Jew. And he was a widower. And he had a bacher, a yeshiva boy, who helped him out, tended to his needs. And there was also an older Polish cleaning lady in the house. Anyway, it was one winter night, and the bacher had to do an errand. So he asked this Rebbe if he can go out for 20 minutes to do the errand. And he said, of course you can go. And the boy left. And when the boy left, this man realized he's alone in the house with the Polish cleaning lady. So he himself went out of the house, and it was a cold winter night. The boy said 20 minutes, but it wasn't 20 minutes. It was like an hour or 2 hours. And when he comes back, this Rebbe is outside, and he's an older man. He's close to 90, and he's shivering. He's trembling from the cold, almost reached frostbite. And this poor yeshiva boy is so agitated and distressed. And he says, Rebbe, I thought you're going to stay home. Why are you outside? He says, listen, you went away, and it's yichud. I can't be with her in the same house, so I had to come outside. He says, Rebbe, why didn't you tell me? And I would have never left. He said, I didn't want to tell you because I don't want you to feel enslaved here and confined. You have an errand and you have the right to your own life as well. So I didn't tell you anything. As they walk into the house, he said, Rebbe, I have a question. Let's face it. You're a holy Jew. You're 90 years old. You're 90 years old. You're 90. You're not a spring chicken anymore. You're not a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old or a 15-year-old. You're a 90-year-old tzaddik. And he says, and with all due respect, she's an elderly Polish woman, and she's not one of the four most beautiful women in the world. Why are you concerned? And he looked at him and he said in Yiddish, Ich mit mein Yetzer Hara, in 5 minut, wär ich jung und sie schön. If you would know my Yetzer Hara, in 5 minutes alone in the house, I become young and she becomes beautiful. This is called an honest Jew, what your grandmother used to call an ehrlich Yid. He understood what the Gemarah says, Ein apotrupos la'arayos. When it comes to promiscuity, you can't put anybody in charge. Everybody is a potential victim. This is the nature of the human condition. It's not bad, it's not evil, it's not tragic. It's exactly the way it's supposed to be. Now, you have to have boundaries. That's why halacha has so many boundaries. The reason it has so many boundaries is not because it thinks we're all evil. No, it's because it recognizes the electricity that exists naturally between a man and a woman, and should exist. And if it doesn't exist, something unhealthy is happening. It means we have become dull. I once heard from a colleague of mine, Rabbi Manis Friedman, that a group of teenagers came to consult with him. They were going on a canoe trip. A few-day canoe trip. It was boys and girls, teenagers were going. And they wanted to consult with him how to do it in a Jewish way. They would pitch tents and, be together. And they wanted to do it in a kosher way. So he said to them, you can bring kosher food, but boys and girls together pitching tents at a canoe trip is already not kosher. So he said, one of the boys turned to him and said, what's the big deal? We're not going to do anything wrong. We're just going to be in one tent together. I'll be with one girl, somebody else will be with another girl. It's not a big deal. Nothing is going to happen. It's just sleeping in a tent. He looked at the boy and he said, well, if that's the case, you don't need a rabbi. You need a psychiatrist. If it's not a big deal, then you need a good therapist. If you're a healthy boy and she's a healthy girl, it should be a big deal. There should be an electricity. There should be an excitement. When you look at a society that says it's not a big deal, it's not a compliment. It means that our senses have become dulled. It means that we're not fully alive. It means that the natural mechanism of human biology is not functioning on an optimal level. And I guess overexposure causes you to dull your senses so that you don't get crazy. But it means that there's something not good about it. In a healthy human condition, there is electricity, there is power, and therefore you need boundaries. And this is what the man was saying. The man was saying you have to know your Yetzer Hara, and your Yetzer Hara ein apotropos larayos. So that's another explanation why the Gemarah speaks about this type of beauty, speaks about its impact, and wants people to understand the impact of this type of beauty on people's lives. Let's take some questions. You could ask all your questions. Rachav converted to Judaism. She could marry Yeshua. She met when she was a harlot because she truly wanted and believed in Hashem. In terms of why Yeshua married Rachav, how he married Rachav, when was the first time he met her, etc. So I'm going to refer you to a class on the yeshiva.net. If you go to the search bar and you type in Rachav, R-A-C-H-A-V, you will see a woman's class I gave a number of years ago on Parshas Shlach. The Haftarah of Shlach is about Rachav, and we told the story of Rachav at length, so you could see all the details about Rachav and Yeshua. It is a fascinating story. Ezra and Malachi, or Ezra/Malachi, urged the Jewish people to abandon their non-Jewish wives. Excellent question. But Mordechai urged Esther to marry Achashverosh. That's a very, very good question. It's a good question. And somebody mentioned before, I saw, Reb Avraham wrote that if you read Malachi and you read Ezra, it's very similar in terms of textual style. That's another support that Malachi is Ezra. But you're asking a good question. If we say that Mordechai is Malachi, and Malachi told the Jews to leave their non-Jewish wives, if we say Malachi is Ezra, and Ezra urged the Jewish people to leave their non-Jewish wives, and Malachi did as well, how does that fit in with Malachi being Mordechai, and Mordechai told Esther to go to Achashverosh? Okay, so first of all, it's two separate opinions. The one who holds that Malachi is Mordechai doesn't hold that Malachi is Ezra, so that's two separate opinions. Anyway, the Gemarah refuted the idea that Malachi is Mordechai, because Malachi and Mordechai are two separate people. The Gemarah did not refute the idea that Malachi is Ezra. That remains a question. Some people say yes, but the Chachamim say it's also two separate people. Besides the fact, it's not really a question, because Mordechai did not urge Esther to go to Achashverosh. Mordechai and Esther were in a predicament. The pasuk says clearly, "Vati lokach Esther el Melech Achashverosh b'chodesh asiru chodesh Teves." Esther was taken to Achashverosh. The word "taken" in English and in Hebrew doesn't mean she went. It means she was literally taken. She was coerced to go, as the Megillah says clearly that Achashverosh shamefully gathered beautiful women from his entire kingdom, from all over the 127 provinces, and Esther, who was beautiful, was taken beyond her choice. So this was not a choice that she made. The choice would have been she goes or she gets imprisoned and killed. That was the choice. So Mordechai did not urge Esther to go to Achashverosh. In fact, Mordechai did not want her to tell Achashverosh who she was. Why not? Why not? And one of the reasons the Mefarshim give, Rashi says, is because he didn't want she should know she's Jewish initially. And one of the there's different reasons you can give. One of the reasons is because he would have found out that she comes from the family of kingship. Shaul, she was a granddaughter of Shaul, from the tribe of Binyamin, just like Mordechai came from Shaul HaMelech. Mordechai came from Shevet Binyamin, Shaul came from Binyamin, and Esther was a granddaughter of Shaul. So, and he didn't want Achashverosh should know that because that means Esther has royal blood. In fact, the Gemarah says that Mordechai suggested to Achashverosh, when Achashverosh told him, I can't get Esther to tell me where she comes from, and Mordechai said, why don't you bring in more women? A woman gets jealous from, as he put it, from other women, and if you bring in another queen, in jealousy, she will tell you who she is. What was Mordechai's intention? Mordechai's intention is Achashverosh should lose taste in Esther and find taste in somebody else, and she could come back home to Mordechai. So Mordechai did not urge her to go. Mordechai and Esther were in a predicament, and then they realized at some point this is divine providence, like everything in the world, we're in God's hands, and that Esther has a mission in the palace, which of course years later would come to fruition. Of course, as somebody mentioned, we should remember that in the times of Ezra, the Jewish men married non-Jewish women, and of course the children were not Jewish. Esther was Jewish, and she married a non-Jewish man, Achashverosh, and her child, Daryavish, would be Jewish, according to the opinion that she had a child with Achashverosh. Okay, so here we have the story of these women, Sarah and who else? And Rachav and Avigayil and Esther. Or instead of Esther, we put in Vashti and we substitute Esther with Vashti, and we have the story about Rachav and the story about Yael and the story about Avigayil and the story about Michal. One triggers a person with her name, one triggers a person with her voice, one triggers a man with remembering her, just remembering her, and one triggers a person by seeing her. It's here I want to give you a fascinating interpretation of the Maharsha. Where did the Gemarah get all this from? How did the Chazal know this? They experimented? How are they supposed to know this? If you mention Rachav, you're drawn into promiscuity. If you hear Yael, you're drawn in. If you remember Avigayil, you're drawn in. And if you see Michal, you're drawn in. How do they know this? What, this happened to people in each generation and they gave this over to the Chazal? So you have to say that this was a tradition that they had from those generations, from the generation of Rachav, from the generation of Yael, from the generation of Avigayil, the generation of Michal. Avigayil and Michal is the same generation. They had this tradition that this is the power of these women. Okay. We're going to continue for another 10 minutes. This was their tradition. But I want to tell you something the Maharsha says. The Maharsha says the Chazal learned the Psukim very, very well, and they found this in the Psukim. When we're introduced to Rachav the first time, it's Joshua chapter 2, Yeshua Perik Beis. The two spies come to Jericho, and over there they find an Isha Zaina Ushma Rachav. A woman who's a Zaina, who's a harlot, and her name is Rachav. Every word in the Tanakh is meticulous. It could have said, Isha Zaina Rachav. Or they met Rachav, who was an Isha Zaina. Why does it Isha Zaina Ushma Rachav? The Tanakh is trying to tell us. The Zaina is connected with her name. Her very name already. Her very name triggers a very deep sensual experience. Rachav Bishma Zinsa. That's why it says Bishma. With her very name, she is Mizana. Fascinating expression. With her very name, she gets people into her web. Her name, just mentioning her name is so powerful. That's why it says Isha Zaina Ushma Rachav, and the Zaina Ushma are in close proximity. There's a juxtaposition. The Zaina is through the very name. Yael. Let's go to Yael. Remember, Yael is what? Her voice. The pasuk says in Shoftim Perek Daled, Judges 4. Remember, Sisera was defeated in war, and he runs away to the tent of Yael. The pasuk says, "Vatoimer elav." Yael tells Sisera, this general, "Surah Adoni Surah." She says to him, "Come, depart from your way and come into my tent." The Gemarah tells us something fascinating in Nazir. Yael didn't just give Sisera a drink of milk and he fell asleep, and she took a nail and she knocked it into his forehead and he died, and this great murderer was killed. But when you read the pasuk clearly, it says there 7 times the word laying, and from here the Gemarah learns out of Maseches Nazir that Yael that day had relations with Sisera, in fact 7 times. 7 times. And therefore he became exhausted, his energy was depleted, she gave him milk, and then she knew she could kill him. Again, every word in Tanakh is meticulous. It could have just said, right, he went into Yael's tent. Or she said to him, come in. But it says, Vatoimer elav, Surah Adoni Surah. Vatoimer elav. It could have said Yael invited him to the tent. It could have been a lot of expressions. The expression is, he is introduced to her through her words. Vatoimer elav. She says to him, come. The words themselves triggered him. The words themselves were inviting. That's why we say Yael bekoila. Yael entices through her voice. Next one is Avigayil. Avigayil, when she meets David HaMelech wanted to kill her husband Naval HaKarmali. Remember we learned earlier. So in Shmuel Aleph, chapter 25, she says to him, V'zacharta es amasecha. I want you to remember your maid. Remember? She's asking him not to kill her husband. Remember? And of course, Chazal interpreted as her telling David, I'm hoping one day we'll be able to get married, which was true. You remember the Gemarah says, Isisa bahadi shusa pilcha, the woman, even as she weaves, she still has her vision and she engages in conversation. She focuses on what's important, or the metaphor of the goose, which has its head down and yet its vision is very distant. Powerful. But what are her words? V'zachartes amasecha. She could have said different words to indicate the concept of marriage. I want you to remember your maid. Remember. Why? Just remembering Avigayil is enough to fall, to feel love towards her. V'zacharta. You'll just have to remember me. It will be enough. That's why Avigayil bischirasa. And finally, Michal bas Shaul b'ri'iyasa. Pasuk speaks in Shmuel Aleph how Michal bas Shaul nishkaf abad ha'chaloin. David HaMelech is bringing back the Arain and he's dancing, and Michal, his wife, is gazing through the window. Later, she would chastise her husband that he was dancing ke'echad harekim, like one of the lowlifes. He was frivolous, and David HaMelech disagrees with her. But the pasuk says she stands behind the window. Why doesn't she want to go out? She doesn't want to go out because she knows Michal bas Shaul b'riyasa. Just seeing her is so powerful, and because of her modesty, she doesn't want to go out. And that's what the Gemarah is telling us. This is the Marsha. Beautiful interpretation, how the Chazal learned this out from the Psukim, when it comes to Rachav, when it comes to Yael, when it comes to Avigayil, when it comes to Michal. The Reich Dudayim says, and the Gemarah wants to tell this to us, to know that sometimes mentioning the name of somebody, hearing the voice of somebody, seeing somebody, or just remembering somebody, thinking about somebody, is enough to get you down into the abyss. Very, very sobering. Very, very rooted in reality. I was once talking to somebody, he said, oh, come on. Oh, come on. He dismissed it. But I want to tell you what a mistake he made. And people who make this mistake often fall prey to the mistake. And those of you who are honest with yourself and have had experience in life know how true this is. When you have a special feeling for somebody, mentioning their name makes a difference. You're not mentioning a name anymore. It's not a name. It's not Yankel, David, Schmedel, Zundel, Sore, Chaye, Sprinze. It's not a name. The name for you captures intimacy. The name has intimacy in it. Rachav, you say Rachav twice. It has a tremendous impact. You're there in a relationship. You're not mentioning a name. Hearing a voice. You're not just hearing a voice. You're hearing a voice with tremendous sensual power, especially if you knew the person, like by Rachav. And the same is true sometimes just remembering somebody or seeing somebody. So it's all about the context of who the person is and where you are in life. The Ben Yehoyada says, there's a question here. Rabbi Yitzchak says, Kol ha'omer Rachav Rachav miyad nikri. Rabbi Yitzchak says, if you say Rachav Rachav, you have a carry, right? So Reb Nachman says, I said it, and it didn't bother me. So he said, because you didn't know her. It's somebody who knew her. Or Tosfos says somebody who had intimacy with her. That's basically the idea. Why didn't Rabbi Yitzchak ask this on the Brisa? The Brisa said, Rachav b'shma zinsa. That through the name, you already go into znus. So Rabbi Yitzchak should have said, that's not true. I said her name, and nothing happens to me. Why does he ask this question? Why does Rabbi Nachman ask this question on Rabbi Yitzchak, not on the Brisa? So the Marsha answers Poshet, because the Brisa never says that you become a Balkari, you have an emission. The Brisa just says that you get drawn into the world of promiscuity. That Rabbi Yitzchak has no problem with. That's fascinating. That he's fine with. So Reb Nachman doesn't have a problem with that. The Gemarah says, when you mention her name, it triggers something. It creates a certain reality for you. That he doesn't argue with. When Rabbi Yitzchak said, Miyad Nikri, you right away have an emission of procreative substance. Here he protests it. Because he says, it's not true. He mentioned her name and nothing happened. That's what the Marsha says. But now there's another question. Reb Nachman should have asked Rabbi Yitzchak, I don't understand. You said Rachav Rachav. How did you say Rachav Rachav? Rabbi Yitzchak said, Kol ha'omer Rachav Rachav miyad nikri. Reb Nachman said, so how do you say it? You just said it. You just said Rachav Rachav. Reb Nachman doesn't say that. He says, nothing happened to me when I say it. Why didn't he ask Rabbi Yitzchak? If that happens, how did you say it? You're not allowed to do such a thing. So the Yavitz answers, Rabbi Yitzchak didn't say twice Rachav. Rabbi Yitzchak said, Kol ha'omer Rachav shtei pa'amim miyad nikri. If somebody says Rachav 2 times, he experiences an emission. The Gemarah, when the Gemarah paraphrases him, the Gemarah makes it more concise. So the Gemarah says, Kol ha'omer Rachav Rachav. That's what the Yavitz answers. The Yavitz is Rabbeinu Yaakov Emdin, Rabbi Yaakov ben Tzvi, 1700s. And finally, I'm going to give you the Ben Yehoyada's answer. The Ben Yehoyada's answer is, Nira HaKavana, the Ben Yehoyada is the Ben Ish Chai, Rabbeinu Yosef Chaim, the rabbi of Baghdad. He passed away in 1900. So he writes, Nira HaKavana k'shemasker shma b'derech chiba sheyada o makira v'libay noitele leha. Mentioning Rachav by her name means not just saying the name Rachav. You say the name Rachav. It means you mention the name with a sense of love, because you know her and your heart gravitates to her. That's what it means. So according to this, you can explain that Rabbi Yitzchak meant Rachav Rachav in terms of affection. In terms of affection. The question is, but then why is Reb Nachman bothered that it didn't do anything to him? Reb Nachman didn't have an affection to Rachav. He didn't even know Rachav. So it would seem that Reb Nachman understood Reb Yitzchak meant somebody just says Rachav Rachav miyad nikri, and that's what was bothering him. And therefore, Rabbi Yitzchak said, it's not true. Nachman said, it's not true. I mentioned her name, and nothing happens. So Rabbi Yitzchak said, it's B'yodo Makira Kamina. So, but I just wanted to mention what the Ben Yehoyada says, that what Rachav B'Shma means, not just you mention Rachav's name, but it means there's a way of mentioning her name, and that affects very powerfully the human being. It's interesting, and I'll conclude with this. I mentioned before that this Gemarah is also brought in Masechta Tainus. Masechta Tainus, Daf Hey Amid Beis, the Gemarah brings the same idea about Rachav and Reb Yitzchak and Reb Nachman. And I want to share something interesting with you, because when you look at that Gemarah, I'm just opening it here. Tainus Daf Hey Amid Beis, he speaks there in more details. Reb Nachman and Reb Yitzchak was sitting at a meal, and Reb Nachman asked Reb Yitzchak to say something at the meal, and finally, Reb Yitzchak said, Yaakov Avinu never died. Really, never died? Yeah. Mazare b'chayim, afhu b'chayim. Just like his children are alive, he's also alive. The next thing Rabbi Yitzchak said is, Kol ha'omer Rachav Rachav miyad nikri. If you say Rachav Rachav, you get a keri. You become a bal keri. And Reb Nachman asks him at the meal, it didn't happen to me. So he said it's only somebody who knows her and somebody who recognizes her. B'yoida umakira. If you know her and you recognize her, in other words, if you knew her personally, then it can have that impact. And I told you Tosfos disagrees, and Tosfos says yoida means you had relations with her, and makira means you saw her. Or the Marsha says both are the same. Yoida or makira means because you had relations, therefore you know her. There's three different ways of understanding the Gemarah. Rashi says it's enough just to have known her, and then already Rachav have such an impact. Tosfos says there's two options. One is intimacy and one is seeing her. And the Marsha says there's only one option, intimacy, and through that you recognize her through intimacy. Three ways of understanding the Gemarah, what it means b'yodo makira. When they were about to leave they were about to separate, so Reb Nachman asked Reb Yitzchak to give him a bracha, and he gave him the famous bracha. He said that there was a man in a desert, and he was hungry, and he was thirsty, and he was tired, and he found a beautiful tree. You know the song, right? And it had delicious fruits, and it had a great shadow. It cast a great shadow, and there was a canal of water that was passing, and he ate the fruits, and he drank the water, and he sat in the shade. Then he said, Elon, Elon, mameh avarechecha, how can I bless you? Sweet fruits, you already have sweet fruits. Beautiful shade, you have beautiful shade. There should be a canal of water that passes, you already have water. This tree is blessed in every possible way. It has everything it needs. So he says, Yehi Ratzon, it should be God's will, Shekol Natiyas Shanoitin Mimcha. All the saplings that are planted from you should be like you. All your derivatives, all your offspring, all the seeds that come from this tree and create new saplings should be just like you. They should reflect their progenitor. And he says, what should I bless you, Reb Nachman? Torah, you have wealth, you have children. My blessing is the children that come out from your womb should be like you, which is strange. He could have said your children. He says the children that come out from your womb, they don't come out from his womb. They come out from his wife's womb. But anyway, what's the connection? They're sitting at a meal, and then he speaks about Yaakov not dying, and then he speaks about Rachav, and then he blesses him. It seems very far-fetched. So I once heard a beautiful, beautiful insight from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He made a siyum. He spoke about this Masechta once at the yahrzeit of his father, Chav, and he said that the expression is Mazarei b'chayim avhu b'chayim. The seed of Yaakov is alive, and he's alive. Zarei doesn't only mean children. Zarei means his seed. The uniqueness of Yaakov Avinu was that his seed was alive. Every seed went to life. It was never wasted. The pasuk says, Koichi v'roishis oini. At the end of his life, he told Reuven, you're the beginning of my strength. Rashi says that Yaakov never emitted procreative substance that was wasted. Yaakov understood that this substance has within it such power, it must be utilized in the most optimal and and productive way. So every seed of Yaakov Avinu went to life. It didn't go to death. Every Zarah. And it expressed also in his children. That ultimately every single child of Yaakov Avinu is connected to Yaakov. Lo yidach b'menu nidach, mitasei shleima. Every child of Yaakov Avinu ultimately remains connected and will return to Yaakov Avinu in one way or another. His physical seed, literally his physical seed, and seed in the sense of all of his descendants. The contrast to that is Rachav. The power of Rachav. The power of Rachav is that just mentioning her name can create an emission of procreative substance. This represents the power of a person in one way, or the power of a person in another way. As I told you before, the Gemarah says in Zvachim that Rachav for 40 years was involved in a promiscuous life, and she managed to get everybody mishuga. She got everybody. Everybody, the Gemarah says, was with her. The Pasuk says that she told the spies of Yeshua, there's no spirit left in any man. How did she know there's no spirit left in any man? Because she knew every man. That was the power of Rachav. That's the contrast. And therefore, he blesses him at the end that all the children that come from you should be like you. It's not just the physical children that come from you. The seed, every seed should have your full, intense personality and essence. There shouldn't just be that a person allows the procreative substance to be emitted because they're bored, they're idle, they have nothing to do, they're in a bad mood, they're depressed, because there's such power in it. And when it's not used in a productive way, it actually distances a person from who they really are. And the reason it distances you from who you really are, because it's such a powerful energy, it's such a powerful force. If I allow all my anxiety to be released that way, I don't get to know who I am. But if I could control myself and be the boss, be the master, then not going to that pleasure allows you to figure out who you really are, what's bothering you, and then you could become a great person. Because that seed of life must be guarded and protected in the most powerful way, because it has within it the essence of the soul. That's why there's such a pleasure in it. That's why there's such a power in it. It has within it the essence of the soul. And whenever you're dealing with such deep things, you have to be very careful how it's being expressed and where it's being expressed. So that's his blessing that said, that everyone that comes from your womb should ultimately be a reflection of you. Every seed of yours should have the full power and energy and truthfulness of your inner identity and your inner soul. I once gave a whole shir on this Gemarah in Tainus. It was a shir, Parshas Vayechi, called Protecting, I think, Guarding the Seed of Life. But that's the idea of the Gemarah Masechta Tainus, Yaakov Avinu loy meis, mazare b'chaim, afu b'chaim. I wish everybody a wonderful day. See you tomorrow. We are going to be live tomorrow at 7 o'clock a.m. and learn the Maimer that we started to learn today on Pesach. That's tomorrow, Wednesday morning, 7 o'clock on the yeshiva.net. You have the source sheets, and then afterwards it will be followed 7:45, Bli Neder, by the Gemarah Masechta Megillah Shir. That's going to be tomorrow, which is Wednesday morning. Tomorrow night, Wednesday night, we're going to have a special shir. I told you this is a time to add in Torah. So we're going to have a special shir, again virtual. It's going to be Wednesday evening, 9 o'clock p.m. on the yeshiva.net. We're going to be learning Lekutei Sichos Parshas Pekudei. It's a talk, a sicha by the Lubavitcher Rebbe on Parshas Pekudei. Lekutei Sichos volume 11. Dissecting a very difficult Rashi in Parshas Pekudei, and it will teach you how to take apart a Rashi, how to understand a Rashi, how to learn every word in Rashi and see the meticulousness in Rashi. There's also an incredible lesson in life, what it takes to be a Jewish leader, what it takes to be a Rebbe, what are the qualifications of a real leader, and the concept of a bracha. It's very, very interesting talk. That's going to be Wednesday evening, 9 p.m., right here at the yeshiva.net, Wednesday night, and everybody is invited to come. As usual, it's also going to be live on YouTube, and it's going to be live on Facebook. And you can also ask your questions, and God willing, we will address them. I wish you a healthy day, a meaningful day, a beautiful day, an inspiring day. I love you and I missed you. I'm sorry under the circumstances. This is how we do it, but this is what technology was created for. Keep healthy. It's very, very important. Follow all the regulations of the health department in terms of hygiene, in terms of disinfecting, in terms of not leaving your home if you're not feeling well, in terms of being very careful to pass on the coronavirus to others, because there are people who are at high risk, and it's everybody's responsibility to be sensitive to the life and longevity and well-being of others. Do not take this lightly. This is a challenge, and we have to work together to curtail and curb this coronavirus and daven for humanity, daven for our planet, daven for China, daven for Italy, daven for Eretz Yisrael, especially for Italy, for people in Italy. Heart-wrenching stories from there, and may God grant health and happiness to all of humanity. And let's hope that from this we will experience a new dawn of a new oneness, a new clarity, a new awareness, a new level of health, and a new relationship with our true selves and with each other and with godliness. So the social distancing should only be external but not internal. Have a great day and a beautiful day. My love and blessings to all of you. A lot of hatzlacha.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.